Premiership Football, proudly brought to you by Nissan Australia, Carlton and United Breweries, your State Insurance Office and State Bank Victoria.
On that one day in September, it's the 1988 VFL Grand Final between Hawthorn and Melbourne. Can the Hawks prove that they are the best side in the competition after heading the ladder most of the year? Or will the Demons become the first team to take out the flag after coming from 5th spot? It's the Hawks' 6th Grand Final in a row and Melbourne's first in 24 years. Very good afternoon, everyone. From Melbourne on the Australian Television Network, we welcome you to our live and exclusive coverage of the 1988 VFL Grand Final between Hawthorn and Melbourne. At the Melbourne Cricket Ground at the moment, an absolute capacity crowd to see this finale to the 1988 season. The members' stand was packed at round about 10:30 this afternoon, and just about all the seats in the outer have now been taken. Truly it is, from above, a magnificent sight. Hawthorn is playing in its 6th successive Grand Final. Lost only 3 games during the year. They were to Carlton, Melbourne and Sydney. It defeated Carlton in the 2nd semi-final for a straight-through berth in today's game. Melbourne, on the other hand, finished 5th. It won the elimination final against the West Coast Eagles, the first semi-final against Collingwood by 13 points, and the preliminary final last week over Carlton by 22 points. As I said, the crowd certainly building up to probably what would be round about just on 100,000. And it really is going to be a superb day here at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. I should mention too that we did have a couple of showers of rain during the reserve grade competition. It won't really affect the ground, which is in superb condition, and you can see they're looking out towards the west and southwest. We might get a few more showers during the course of the day. Peter Donegan looks at Grand Final Day 1988.
Let's hope the rain holds off, huh?
Dawn breaks over Melbourne, over the most famous sporting stadium in the nation. The day of days has arrived. Five hours before the bounce of the ball, but the faithful are turning up in their droves. The big clash drew ever closer and the fans were warming up.
Come on, let's go. Demons.
Just which captain is going to hold that cup aloft at round about 5:15 this afternoon. Everybody's busy here today at the MCG, and the pie sellers are doing a roaring trade. Ian Robertson and Peter McKenna preview the big game after this break. Welcome back to the Melbourne Cricket Ground and our telecast of Grand Final Day 1988. A telecast going right around the world. It will be seen in many countries, including the United States and Canada. That's for the first time today at our national hookup. So a very good afternoon to Peter McKenna and Ian Robertson. Gentlemen, your thoughts on the big one?
Well, big day, isn't it, Pete? Big day.
Well,
been here a couple of times, haven't you?
It's a huge day. I've been here once in 1970, and you can see the Melbourne rooms there. We just saw a shot of the Hawthorn rooms before that. It's a huge day. I think it's a very, very big task in particular for Melbourne, Ian, because Hawthorn have been here 6 years in a row. A lot of those players have been together all that time. They've been through the mill. They're a very experienced side. I think that the nerves might get to a few of those Melbourne players. Do you see it that way?
Well, I do, Peter. I think that you can't beat experience, and Hawthorn, you've mentioned, have been here the 6th consecutive occasion. and look at the players that have been there on those occasions. Dipia Domenico, Brereton, Tuck, Ayres, Langford, Mew. What a great lineup that they've got. I really believe that they should win comfortably. I think a lot depends on this Melbourne weather. If it doesn't rain, I think that Hawthorn will win convincingly. They've got a lineup up in the forward area with Brereton and Dunstall, and even John Kennedy comes in and kicks 3 or 4 goals in big matches. And a rover like Platten is tremendous.
Well, the Melbourne side, on the other hand, are not a real team of stars. They're just an honest, even goers, they are. Probably the key to their side is Wilson. If Wilson takes over in the centre, he can be a very, very inspiring player. They'll need White to do well at full forward. A big responsibility on Jimmy Steins in the ruck today against Greg Deere, because he's got his partner in crime out and Steve O'Dwyer. Johnson's had a magnificent season in the back pocket. I think the big pressure is going to be on the 2 guys in the key defence post. Danny Hughes playing on Dunstall. He doesn't like playing on quick moving forwards. That's if he lines up on him. Dersmer has beaten Kernahan. Can he beat Brereton if he lines up on him? There's the Hawks, so they fair dinkum. They're going to be very difficult to beat. I think they'll win by 4 or 5 goals.
Okay, thank you, Peter McKenna, and thank you, Ian Robertson. Hawthorn and Melbourne in the grand final. Drew Morfitt takes a look at the Hawks and the Demons.
After joining the VFL in 1925, Hawthorn was forced to wait until 1957 to make its finals debut, when the club beat Carlton in the first semi-final. In 1961, the Hawks made the finals again in former captain John Kennedy's second year as coach. Kennedy drove his players hard, but the extraordinary workload paid off in the 61 grand final when the Hawks ran away after half-time against Footscray to win its first flag. Since then, the floodgates have opened. In the 70s, the Hawks won 2 more with Kennedy and 1 with David Parkin, and during the 80s, they have continued their role as the VFL's pace-setters. Under Alan Jeans, they played in 5 consecutive grand finals, and now with stand-in coach Alan Joyce in charge, Hawthorn has the chance to win its 3rd flag in 6 years. On the other hand, Melbourne won 11 premierships before Hawthorn had won its first, but there is no question the Demons' halcyon years stretched for a decade from 1954. Under Norm Smith, the Demons made the grand final for 7 years on the trot, winning 5 premierships. But since taking out the 1964 pennant, Melbourne has mostly languished at the bottom of the ladder. A stunning revival last year took the Demons to within a kick of the grand final. However, the club was cruelly denied a place in the biggest match of all by this Gary Buckenara drop punt. Now the Demons are hell-bent on turning the tables on the Hawks.
The history of Hawthorn and Melbourne in finals. Hawthorn made the 4 first in 1957 when they defeated Carlton in a game here on the Melbourne cricket ground. A hailstorm fell in the 3rd quarter. The ground was white. Hawthorn won through on that occasion. They met Melbourne in a preliminary final, and of course they were absolutely slaughtered in some of the halcyon years of Melbourne. That was 24 years ago. Melbourne played in their last grand final. Neil Crompton kicked that winning goal. He came up from the back pocket. Let's go to Walsing Matilda now. On ground to sing it today is Noel Watson.
Once a jolly swagman camped down by Billabong under the shade of a coolabah tree, and he sang as he watched, and he waited till his belly boiled. He sang, "You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me." Down came the jumper to drink at the Billabong. Up jumped the swagman and grabbed him with glee, and he sang as he watched, and he waited till his belly boiled. He sang, "You come a waltzing Matilda with me." Waltzing Matilda, Lord, waltzing Matilda. You come a waltzing Matilda with me. And he sang as he watched, and he waited up rode the squatter, mounted on his thoroughbred. Up jumped the troopers, 1, 2, and 3. They said, who's that jolly jumper? You got it and you tuck it back. They said, son, you come a waltzing Matilda with me. Waltzing Matilda, Lord, waltzing Matilda. You come a waltzing Matilda with me. They said, who's that jolly jumper? You got it and you tuck it back. They said, son, you come a waltzing Matilda with me. Up jumped the swagman and he right into the pillow barn. You'll never take realize it here. And it's jokes that may be hard as you walk round by the blue pond. The singer, you come a waltzing Matilda with me. Waltzing Matilda, Lord, waltzing Matilda. You come a waltzing Matilda with me. And it's jokes that may be heard as you walk round by the blue pond. The singer, you come a waltzing Matilda with me. And it's ghosts that may be heard as you walk round by the blue pond. The singer, you come a waltzing Matilda with me. Come a waltzing Matilda with me, yeah, yeah, Lord.
Noel Watson with his rendition of Waltzing Matilda. Grand Final Day 88. We'll take a break. Back at the MCG in just a moment. Welcome back to the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which was, of course, the main stadium for the Olympic Games here in 1956. They were held between the 22nd of November and the 8th of December. The opening ceremony was held in brilliant sunshine and the rest of the games really followed. And there's a man who was an idol in his time, a former world record holder. He was the second in the world to break the 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister of England was, of course, the first. And John Landy being introduced to the crowd now. Won a silver medal, the Empire Games in Vancouver. He came second to Bannister on that occasion, and of course he came third here in the 1500 metres final when he was beaten by what was then, or who was then, a virtual unknown in Ron Delaney. Let's go down now to midfield and hear what John Landy has to say about Melbourne's bid for the 1996 Games.
Mostly very good. I didn't like being beaten by that great wild Irishman Ron Delaney, but apart from that, a wonderful experience. And Mike, can I say that of all the Olympics that have been held, I believe Melbourne had the largest crowds at the main stadium. I believe that still holds. Wonderful, enthusiastic crowds.
And of course you read the Olympic oath on behalf of your fellow athletes on that occasion, John.
That I certainly did, even though I had to dig out the oath from my pocket because it wasn't on the dais when I got up there.
John, this magnificent stadium, 100,000 people plus here today for the 1988 Grand Final. just how great is the atmosphere?
It's tremendous. You can't even feel your feet hitting the ground. It's something that you'd have to experience, and I think this ground in particular, Mike, is a wonderful occasion to hold the Olympic Games.
Would you like to see the 1996 Olympic Games staged right here?
I certainly would, and I believe we have the other facilities like the tennis centre, the Olympic Park complex, Port Phillip Bay for yachting. I think we have a superb site for the 1996 Olympic Games.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, John Landy would love to have the Olympic Games here in 1996. What about you people? You've got the final say. The people of Melbourne, would you like the Olympic Games back here? Not good enough. Do it again. Would you like the Olympic Games back here in Melbourne? Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, would you thank and congratulate our wonderful athlete, John Landy. John, great to see you, looking so well. Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, at this stage of the VFL Maya Grand Final of 1988, would you please join the Australian Children's Choir, the National Boys Choir, the band of the 3rd Military District, and the 3rd Divisional Royal Australian Artillery Band for the playing of our national anthem.
Advance Australia Fair, and it's time now to check the Nissan ground report for Grand Final Day 1988 between Hawthorn and Melbourne. Two teams who have never met in a grand final before. The wind 15 kilometres per hour coming from the southwest, going towards the left forward pocket at the other end. Currently at 17 degrees, was a little bit warmer earlier in the day. Cloudy, we may get a few showers, but of course the ground is very, very firm indeed. Umpires for this afternoon being announced at the moment, Brian Sheehan and Peter Cameron. Peter Cameron, of course, one of the veterans in the men in white. And Brian Sheehan umpiring his first grand final this afternoon. Melbourne players just out ready to come onto the ground. They will in turn be followed by Hawthorn. Peter McKenna and Ian Robertson, I think we did get your selections earlier, but let's just check on them now. Peter, I think you were going for Hawthorn.
Well, it depends entirely on the weather. If it's dry right throughout the game, I think Hawthorn easily. I think if it's wet, it'll give Melbourne some chance. I think Hawthorn just too good, Pete. I think they'll win by 4 or 5 goals.
Ian Robertson?
I think Hawthorn will win. I'd like to see Melbourne make a real go of it. Their season's meetings there on the screen now show that Melbourne beat Hawthorn earlier on in the season, and the Hawks really trounced Melbourne with about 5 weeks to go before the season finished. And I really get some feeling that Hawthorn, leading up to this with only one match in the 4 weeks, they'll be very, very fresh. And it's proven over the years that the team that goes straight into the grand final are very, very hard to beat. I think they'll win comfortably.
Well, that proved to be the case last year, didn't it, with Carlton?
Certainly did, Peter, and the Hawks limped into the grand final last year. And on a day that was a lot hotter than this afternoon, I like to see Melbourne play well. I think everybody does. It's a sentimental crowd that are going for the Demons, but I really think that they're undermanned and they really can't kick a winning score.
And we welcome viewers in the United States through ESPN to our telecast as the Melbourne side comes out of the MCG. And we also welcome viewers in Canada through the network CTV and TSN. Welcome to the Melbourne Cricket Ground for the 1988 VFL Grand Final between the underdogs Melbourne and the warm favourites Hawthorn. Melbourne banner little caricature there of Steve O'Dwyer, who was, of course, suspended from playing for 3 weeks by the VFL Tribunal for an indiscretion last week. He's not taking his place, of course, in the side today, and the cheer squad hasn't let him down. It's Melbourne's first grand final for 24 years. They are the nostalgic favourites, but of course they're up against a side in Hawthorn who have been on top of the ladder for most of the year, and they, I would think, would be very hard to beat. Thousands of balloons reaching skywards as the Demons make their first circuit of the arena. Capacity crowd stands absolutely packed, around about 100,000 here. As we go down now to the ground, here comes Hawthorn, led onto the field by their veteran captain, Michael Tuck. Breaks and the Hawthorn balloons go skyward to join the red and blue. Hawthorn today playing in their 6th grand final. Let's go down now to Don Scotts and Bernie Quinlan on the ground.
It's absolutely fantastic, isn't it, Bernie? When Melbourne broke through that banner, the roar was just something you'd have to be experienced.
It's a great feeling out here, Don. It's something I haven't really experienced before. You've done it a few times yourself, 4 times before, but just being out here in the middle of the ground with all this excitement, we're nearly run through by the Melbourne team when they came out on the ground. It's a great feeling. It's a great experience to be out here.
But as a player, you really don't focus on the crowd at all. Your job, as we saw the Melbourne guys when they brushed passes, they were just intent on playing football. But here as a spectator, you can really absorb it.
Oh, it's a fantastic feeling. I suppose the players, they have to get it out of their mind. Who are you going for anyway today?
I'm going for Melbourne, Bert.
Oh, I'm going for Hawthorn.
Back to you boys up in the commentary area.
Well, thank you, Don, and thank you, Bernie. Players will take up their position shortly for the grand final of 1988. And let's introduce the men who will bring you the match commentary-wise this afternoon. We say a very good afternoon as Steve O'Dwyer looks on, the man that was caricatured on the Demon banner. Our commentators this afternoon, Drew Morfitt and Dennis Committee, with special comments from Malcolm Blight. Gentlemen, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Peter.
Yes.
Well, it's great to be here. Fancy Don Scott, who captained Hawthorn in 2 premierships, going for Melbourne. Of course, he's the ruck coach there these days, so I suppose he has a foot in each camp. Great atmosphere when they came onto the ground, and Melbourne have been starved of success for so long. I suppose, what would it be? 90% of the crowd will follow Melbourne?
I think you're about right. Perhaps even a shade conservative there. It really is a Melbourne house. In fact, it's a Melbourne country, isn't it? Everybody wants to see Melbourne get up and win this grand final. And I suppose the fact they're here, Mal, is good news because it's made for a great week and a change, which was overdue.
Yes, 24 years is a long time not to be here and to be involved in this. And there's a lot of young players in the Melbourne side. They're not a very experienced football side. Their form in the last 2 years has been nothing short of sensational, coming from lower in the list over a number of years.
Especially in pressure games recently.
Look, they've played 3 finals in a row, and perhaps having been through that a few times myself, that 4th one's pretty tough, coming up against a very professional side like Hawthorn.
Well, last year they strung together about 8 wins in a row to get there, and this year it's been about 4 wins in a row. So it's something. 13 last chance games, and they've won 12 of them. Now the captain's gathering in the middle, the oldest man on the ground and the youngest captain in VFL football this year, Greg Healy. Toss of the coin, Don Scott.
Michael Tuck has called. Tails. Michael Tuck's won the toss, and he is kicking to left of screen. Michael Tuck kicking to left of screen.
And Michael Tuck playing in his 9th grand final. What a remarkable record.
And Melbourne don't have one player who's played in the grand final before. That says something. And that, I think, is the scoring end, the end of which Hawthorn will go first. We were talking about the good performances by Melbourne, but the record of the sides that have finished 5th and made it to the grand final isn't a particularly good one. Collingwood and Essendon have done it, but on both occasions, 81 and 83, they lost by in excess of 80 points. Hopefully that won't be the case today.
Yes, conversely, Dennis, that Melbourne really were an honest 5th. They were 2nd on the ladder for quite a bit of the year.
Yeah.
And it was only the last 4 or 5 weeks, so they're probably more a 2nd or 3rd side in realistic positions on the ladder.
If you're watching on ESPN, shades of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are family to run through for Hawthorn this afternoon.
Well, talking about the string of matches in the last 2 years that Melbourne have won when it's been do or die, last chance. The only one they've lost was the preliminary final last year, which they led all day and lost with a kick after the siren.
Yeah, tragedy, but they've fought back very well this year, and in a great preliminary final against Carlton, they've earned the right to be here as they go in front of them, the members stand at the MCG.
And the umpires this afternoon, Peter Cameron, officiating in his third grand final, perhaps an omen there for Hawthorn. He umpired their last premiership win back in 1986, and with him this afternoon, Brian Sheehan. There's Peter Cameron in the foreground, Brian Sheehan umpiring his first grand final, so congratulations to him.
There'd be some pre-match nerves for Brian Sheehan out there for the first time, just like in the Melbourne Football Club.
Yes, there would be. In fact, it's only his third season of umpiring at this standard, so it's a very, very good effort by Brian Sheehan, obviously very highly thought of by the umpires panel.
Michael Tuck, the veteran, who is playing in his 9th grand final in his 17th season of football. He's 35 years of age. There he is, partly hidden there with the beard, revving up the team just before they get underway. He started in 1972. Now, Greg Healy, who is the opposing captain, would have been playing about under 10s then.
Tucky would thank you for that. Yes, the attendance last season, 92,000, just over. It would be bigger this year, Mel?
You'd think so, Dennis, and just following up from Michael Tuck, who already holds the record for the games played in finals, 32 of them. So this is, in fact, his 33, and he leads that record now by 4 games. A terrific effort. Amazing.
It'll take some topping a long time, I would imagine.
Dermot Brereton, who missed 6 matches during the season because of suspension. He was absolutely thrashed in the grand final last year. His opponent won the medal for the best on the ground, and Dermot Brereton looks as though he's coming over to start on the bench, but instead of that, he just went over to speak to, or slapped the Barry Gavin on the hand, who's the team physiotherapist. And Peter Curran is down there, who is a player who is unfortunately missing from this grand final because of injury, but Dermot Brereton is going out to take his place there. A lot to prove for Dermot Brereton today.
Yeah, it's just looking at those interchange benches too. Viney and Phoebe coming off for Melbourne. Oh, no, it's not actually.
Stein starting at one end of the ground. He's at full forward. Hughes will do the ruck work.